Mr. McBeth, is HIMARS capable of turning the tide of the war? And if so, could you explain to our audience why this type of weapon could be a game changer?
So there's been a couple of game changers. The Javelin has been a game changer. The Bayraktar drone has been a game changer. The Neptune missile has been a game changer. The M777 howitzer has been a game changer. And now this HIMARS system has been a game changer. Ukraine is losing a lot of land for all these game-changing weapons. The fact is that a HIMARS system is fantastic for conducting deep strikes behind Russian lines, but it can't retake lost territory.
Given Ukraine's rising capacity for precision strikes on Russian targets, would it be feasible for them to recover lands in Donbass and Kherson in the near future? What would the Ukrainians need to push the Russians back on the ground?
So one of the useful parts about HIMARS is that HIMARS will allow for precision strikes against Russian supply depots far in their rear lines, and that'll force the Russians to commit more resources toward finding and destroying these launchers. For every resource they're using to find these launchers, there's one less resource to actually fight on the front lines. So that's one advantage. But what would the Ukrainians need to push Russia back? They would need about 500 tanks and about 2,000 armored personnel carriers. And once they get that equipment, it's certainly possible that they could retake lost territory, but we're going to see some horrendous casualties because it's always easier to defend than to attack.
One of the key elements of the war is a surprise. However, as the parties are increasingly engaged in a war of attrition, unless you count the introduction of Western weapons by the Ukrainians, we're not seeing many signs of strategic or tactical surprise by either side. There's no shock and awe, if you will. Could that change?
I don't see that changing. Both sides know each other's composition and disposition, and both armies are, for the most part, set. So I don't see there being any kind of shock and awe campaign. It would just be too difficult to marshal forces.
Russians have alluded to the possible use of nuclear weapons in the past, but so far, despite heavy losses on the battlefield, they've abstained from the use of tactical nuclear weapons. In your view, what are the deterrent factors for Moscow?
So nuclear weapons do have political consequences. I think even China or India might get upset if Russia used tactical nuclear weapons. But the problem is that there's really no good targets in Ukraine for tactical nuclear weapons. Typically, a tactical nuclear weapon would be used on the battlefield to destroy either command and control centers or to create a breakthrough in order to create a gap in order to exploit a breakthrough. So you use a nuclear weapon on the front line and then push all of your forces through that gap. But Russia doesn't have the forces to exploit a breakthrough. So there's no reason to use a nuclear weapon on the front line. They can't follow it up with any forces.
This is the first modern war involving a superpower. What are the lessons of this war for military specialists worldwide? What do we know now that we didn't before February 24th, 2022?
Well, I think countries do not have enough ammunition or armored vehicles. I think Germany has a little over 200 tanks. Spain maybe has 300. Europe really let its army go. And Europe is not in any kind of shape to fight a protracted war. So lesson number one is that you need way more ammunition and equipment than you think you need. Lesson number two is civilian training with firearms. During the initial phases of the war, Ukraine was literally handing out AK-47s to people who had never shot a gun before, and they got a little bit of training. What might not be a bad idea is for countries in Europe to consider creating shooting clubs where people can go and learn how to shoot military firearms under supervision. So that way, if there is ever some kind of call to arms, at least people have basic familiarity with weapons. And the third item is cyber war. For years, I've heard that the next war is going to be a cyber war. And that really hasn't happened. I think cyber war has been severely overhyped. And in order for cyber war to work, you need to back it up with some kind of kinetic force. And you're not really seeing any kind of cyber war or cyber attack that's then used to follow up with a kinetic attack. So it seems like cyber war was highly overhyped.